you very briefly about the makeup of the flag poi. So this is the arc you saw me demonstrating outside. Very simply, to create this, and I will show you this in more detail later, we're taking a piece of fabric. This one is 45 centimetres in each direction. And to create the arc, you would effectively measure a piece of string, pop it in the middle of a piece of paper, draw around, cut it out. That gives you your arc. The 45 centimetres here gives you the space to turn over for the hem. I think from using these flag poi for a performance, we've noticed that they're slightly too small. So you may want to experiment with 50 centimetres or 55 centimetres, make them slightly bigger. The construction's very straightforward. You've got a hem on one side and a slightly wider hem on the other with a curtain weight inside, and I'll show you how we construct that later. The handle itself consists of a rivet, 2 split rings from key rings. In fact, the little ones just came off key rings we weren't using, and the big ones we purchased off eBay. This is a piece of webbing we cut along length and created handles, and this is a poi swivel. The poi swivel can be created by buying a fisherman's swivel for fishing lines, which are a very cheap way of doing it, but are less smooth. So for beginners, probably a really great idea for getting started. These ones are proper poi swivels designed for poi and come from Fire Toys or Oddballs at about £1.50 each. So this is our square flag poi. It's actually a bit big to fit on the table with the camera. So I'm just going to show you this corner, which is where the curtain weight is. So you see here I've got one length of the heavyweight curtain weight. I've made a pocket just by creating a long rectangle of fabric, and I've sewn that over the top of the curtain weight. So I've not only sewn down the side here and the best I can in the corner, but along the edges, but I've also hand sewed stitches over the top of the entire curtain weight to keep it in place. And that's really important, because as you're spinning and you've got the centrifugal force, you don't want this curtain weight to move. Now, one alternative you can use is to use these circular disc curtain weights. So instead of having an L shape in this bottom corner, you would have your circular discs here, but you would do the same thing. You would create a square pocket here, you'd sew on 3 sides, push in your curtain weights, and then sew along the 4th side, and that would give you your weight in your bottom corner. So I just want to talk very briefly about fabric. Synthetic fabric is the preference for flag poi because it flows really well. This is really cheap satin. I've had a lot of success with cheap satin, so that would be a really good recommendation. This is more of a viscosy type fabric. I haven't made any from these yet, but I'm planning to. Very see-through, quite sheer, so something that would be nice to try. This was a heavyweight synthetic fabric to make the squares, and they do behave differently because the fabric's heavier, but they're still nice to use. The fabric I'm going to use today is this rainbow fabric. Now, one downside is it is single-sided print, so you could make heavier poi by double-siding the fabric, so putting 2 pieces together to make a poi. I'm not going to do that today, so it will give a different effect depending on what move you use, because sometimes you'll see the white side and sometimes you'll see the colour. I'm also going to make sure that I cut my fabric out so that the stripes match, so we've got the same colours in the same places on both sides, but you can play about with that. And that's really one tip for working with patterns, is just think about, because you're creating 2 separate pieces, where you want your pattern to land, and do you want them both to be symmetrical or mirror image or completely different. So I wanted to talk about all the different things that you might want to buy in order to make your flag poi. So let's start with the curtain weights. So curtain weights come in 2 types. You get a string like this. So I've got 3 different weights here: light, medium, heavy. or you can get circular discs again in 2 different weights. And it's totally up to you what you use. As I explained before, they need to go on the front edge. If you're using this kind of a weight, if I bring this poi back out again, this kind of a weight would go in a square here, and you would make a little pocket and cover it up. And it's a bit of trial and error how much you use. You can see here, this is the heavyweight in there, and I've put an L-shaped piece of heavyweight in there. You could replace that with a square at the front. With the yellow here, if I found this one, this is a double length of, I think this one, let's have a feel. No, it's the it might be the thin one even. And that's a double length in there. I've actually folded it like this, so you've got this loop here, and then sewn in that gap so it can't move. So it's all about fixing it in the right place. So the other things I've got here are alternative poi handles. So you can buy silicone poi handles. There's tutorials on YouTube on how to thread and knot them, and you have a washer in the middle that helps. I've got here the split rings, and you can just order these off eBay, your standard keyring split rings. There's the poi swivels. This here is the rivet kit. It's called an eyelet kit. A rust-proof brass, with a rust-proof brass tool included, 5.5mm, 40 sets, a starter kit. That's what I use. And then I have the tailor's awl. Let me take it out so you can see the writing. Tailor's awl, and that's used to put the initial hole in. If you need extra help, if your fabric's thick and you need extra help in getting your rivet through, then sometimes they use the tailor's awl. The one thing I haven't got to show you is the webbing here, which I use for the straps. I just can't find any, so I will order some more at some point. So you'll see here it's 2 centimetres wide, and I use, these are 8cm handles, so I use about 18 centimetres to make one of these straps. Alternatively, you might find some key rings in the house that are advertising ones with little plastic loops. They're quite good to get you going, or you could just make yourself some loops out of fabric as well. So I've just got an envelope to illustrate how you would make a pattern if you want to do that on a big piece of paper. Let's make this 10 centimetres that way. Oops. Working in a small space with a very big ruler, and 10 centimetres this way. And then you would get your handy piece of string. You would wrap it around your pen like so. You would mark your 10 centimetres. You really want this down at the base as near as you can get. So you're marking your 10 centimetres and you're drawing, and you'll see it's just a little bit out, so it takes a couple of attempts just to get a few trails till you get one that you're happy with. And then you would take your scissors and obviously cut that out, and then that's your pattern, which you can then take once you've cut it out to put on your cloth as your template. So this is my rainbow fabric cut out. Because I folded the fabric over and carefully, if I take these clips off, I'll show you how I carefully aligned the stripes so that I've got a mirror image on both sides. Because I had the crease here, I'm just busy cutting this crease in half. But as you can see with slippy fabric, it isn't always as easy as it looks. So just pulling the fabric taut, bringing the scissors inside and snipping. So here's one piece of the cut out fabric for the poi. What you need to bear in mind with satin is it frays really easily. This one's actually not so bad as some of the others I've used, but over time it will fray. So the next step I'm going to do is zigzag around the curve, and I'm going to zigzag along this straight edge, just to make sure that we limit any fraying. As you can see on this side, I've actually used the edge of the fabric. If you don't have an edge of a fabric there, you would zigzag all three sides. So before I sew my zigzags, I want to talk about feet for the sewing machine. This is your normal presser foot. This is absolutely fine. I'm here using a walking foot because that helps with the slippy fabric in terms of feeding it through nicely. It's not a necessity. You just might find your fabric slips and you need to go a little bit slower with your sewing machine. So here we go. And I always stop after I've done a little bit and just check. So you can see here it's just nicely catching the fabric to prevent it from fraying. So I've now done the curve and I'm just turning the corner to do the one straight edge. So if we move the sewing machine out of the way, you'll see this is our poi nicely edged. Now with my flag poi, I don't bother hemming this curve because it's fiddly and it looks messy. So I think this puts a nice decorative edge on the edge of the poi. This straight side is going to get hemmed, so you're not going to see that. So now that we've got our pieces cut out and we've taken care of any fraying, you can see here there's a little bit of fraying, so you might want to get scissors and just trim these off, but you could just trim these off at the very end of your project. What we're going to do now is do the first hem. So we're literally, oh, we've got another little piece of cotton there, so just keep tidying up as you go. But we're literally just going to turn this over about 1 centimetre all around, clip down. So I'll just put a couple of clips in to show you, and then I'll do it a little more neatly off camera, but just so you get the idea. So you're going to clip down like this, which will give you the hem, and then you're just going to sew quite close to the edge down to keep that in place. Now, as I said before, your poi needs to be a mirror image. So the second one we would lay over the top in the opposite direction, so that makes sure that we're doing things from the opposite way. And I just want to make sure that you can see this side, so we're going to take that across there and do a 1 centimetre hem as well on this side. The way I've organised this in terms of remembering how to do it is by having these two finished edges both on the same side. What that also does is when we fold in and we insert our curtain weight in there, that edge of fabric actually gives us a little bit more to play with in terms of the hem. So next stage, once you've sewn your hem across here, so you've got a nice hem, is to do this side. So there's two things I'm going to do now. The first is I have taken a small piece of satin and I've just zigzagged around the edge to stop it fraying. And this is going to go at this top end here. I've actually matched the colours so it doesn't show through the satin too much. And literally as I hem this side, this is going to get hemmed in here, and I will sew around all 4 edges of the square. And that's just so when we put the rivet in for the handle, it's got extra strength by being double thickness. So that's going to go at that end. At this end is going to go the curtain weight, and the curtain weight I'm using is a medium weight. It's 48 centimetres long, and I'm going to fold it in half and place it along this edge here. Alternatively, you could get heavyweight, which is this one, and you could place a single length here. But what you've got to be careful of when you're sewing is that you don't want it to slip. So if you just use a single length, you need to make sure you zigzag over your hem to keep it in place. Whereas you'll see when I sew this medium weight that actually I'm going to hold this in place by putting some stitches in this gap here between the bend. So what we're going to do now is make this hem by folding over like so, just like you would. You need plenty extra on this side just to make sure that you can sew down the side, and it's quite helpful to use clips so that you clip everything in place and you hold it together as you sew. Again, I'll move all this hem right the way to the top and I'll clip in that square at the top, and then I'm going to go down and sew it. But I will film sewing this hem because what I will do is show you how to finish this edge off. So essentially we're going to sew around this square at the top, we're going to sew down, straight down here. I'm going to sew horizontally at this end here to make sure that the weight doesn't drop out, and then in here where it's actually twisted a little, if I untwist it, you can see the shape there. I'm going to sew in between there just to hold it together. You've got to be really careful not to sew the actual curtain weight itself, because if I peel it back you'll see it's got metal pieces inside. That's what gives it the weight. So if your needle lands on the metal, you're going to break your needle and have to change it. So just to show you how this is all pinned up neatly, so you'll see I've got my weight in here, I've put a pin in here just to encourage me to remember that I need to sew in the middle of that loop there, and obviously clipped in on the square there. And now I'm going to put this through the sewing machine using a zipper foot to come down the edge of the weight, and I just continue with the zipper foot. And then it's better with your standard foot to have a even pressure over the top of that loop as you just do half a dozen stitches in the middle. And then we're going to sew along the bottom here to make sure that weight stays solidly in that little packet that we're making for it. Now at this point I'm actually going to take the pin out because I just found that a little bit easier to sew. It's just preference, and you just need to make sure as you reach up to that magnet that you've got enough space to sew in the gap, and go really slowly at this point. And once you're within the size of the curtain weight, then you can just speed up again. So that's us finished off there. I'm just going to snip these loose threads, and I'm going to do one more little bit going across the bottom there just to give the curtain weight no room for manoeuvre. So just an extra little one here. snip those threads there, dip the machine out the way. You can see that now we've got our finished flag poi, albeit that it needs a bit of an iron. So as I'm sewing the middle of the weight, I'm just going to show you how to do that, and hopefully you can see. Turn the machine round. So here I'm just testing with my needle, and my needle's hitting something sharp, so I'm not quite in the right place. This time my needle's going down, so the really important thing is your needle will go down, so you're not going to snap your needle as you sew, and you only need 2 or 3 stitches just to hold it. And that's it. So now that we've made our poi fabric, we need to attach the handle. So the first thing to do is take our eyelet kit. And what you have with your eyelet kit is a tool that allows you to affix the eyelet. You have one that looks like a cap and a piece that looks like a ring. And that's the actual eyelet itself. And the only other tool you need to make this all work is a hammer. So the first thing we do is we take this removable part out, which is what you end up tapping it against, and we put that where we want the eyelet to be. So the first thing we're going to do is make a hole in the fabric, and we do that by inserting the pointy bit into the hole. So it just takes a little bit of fiddling about till you feel it's nestled in. Then you give it a good sharp whack with your hammer. And you will see, hopefully if I hold that to the camera, you will see we've got a hole through, and the fabric ends up inside and it just pops through eventually. So the next thing we've got to do is insert our eyelet. So leaving our base down, you put the bit that looks like a cap onto the base. You push it through the hole like so. You then attach your ring, and the ring has a bit that feels a bit rough and a bit that feels a bit smooth, so you obviously want the smooth bit on the outside because you're going to hold that. So you line all of that up, and once again you put your pointy tool in the middle. You make sure it's all firmly nestled together, and again a good sharp whack with a hammer. And there you can see as I take it up, we've got our eyelet on our poi, and that's nice and firmly attached to the satin now. So I'm going to go ahead and do that for the second poi, and then I'll come back and show you how to construct the handles. So now it's time to build the handles for the poi. So the first thing I've done is attached a key ring to one of the poi swivels. In fact, both of them ready to go, which means now I need to make 2 handles. Now you saw on my poi at the beginning, they're made from webbing, which is the material you get on luggage straps, on rucksack, that kind of thing. Fortunately I've run out, and in this lockdown situation I'm still waiting for some to come through the post. So if any of you have been to conferences, you might have a stash like we do of lanyards. Shamelessly advertising an IT company here. You can use this perfectly. You snip off the top, snip off the ends, and you have what you need to make the straps. So once you've taken your piece of webbing or lanyard, you need it about 18 centimetres long. Again, handles are really personal preference. That makes you an 8 centimetre handle. So what the aim would be is that we would fold it together like this. We would sew this end together. You would have your keyring ring in the middle, and then you would fold that up like so to make your handle. So I had to go with a match and managed to seal the ends of this lanyard. So as you can see, I'm just going to pull it together like that carefully. I don't even bother with any pins, I just try and hold it. And oh, this is where it's just a bit fiddly, getting it into the right spot. Once you've got one line of stitching in, then it holds it really nicely. So you can see now I've held that together really strongly. I'm just going to go forwards and backwards and put a few extra rows of stitching in, making sure this end's connected as well, and then I'll come back and show you what to do next. Okay, so we've got this solidly folded together now. What you need to do is put this seam at the bottom where it's not going to hurt your hands while you're spinning poi. So I just pull it to one side of the ring. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to sew across here, which will fix it in place so that it doesn't slip round, and then you've got the lovely smooth side as your main part of your handle. Again, you might find zipper foot might be easier. I'm just going to give it a go with this regular foot. In fact, I'm going to change the position of my needle so I can afford to be just a little bit further away from the ring. And I'm going to just do a line of backward stitching, so I've got 3 rows of stitching before I finish off. And then I'll finish. So if I take that out and I snip the cotton threads, this is your finished handle. So your back would be where your seam is, and your front would look like that. Right, I'm going to go ahead and make the second one, and then I'll put it all together. So the last bit to do, now we have our handle pieces and our poi, is just to construct everything together. So we'll literally, I'll do it this way because it'll probably be slightly easier. So pop the other end of the poi swivel onto your handle, smoothing everything round, that's it, and then attach it to your poi flag, and that's probably the trickiest bit, is just getting through that hole to spin it round. There we go. Open that up. Oh, I've just caught a little bit of my fabric. There we go. So that is your poi flag. I'm going to attach the other handle and go and give them for a spin, and we'll see what we think.